as part of their sophisticated information and disinformation operations, engage actively with so-called non-governmental organizations, environmental organizations working against shale gas, obviously to maintain European dependence on imported Russian gas. That's my interpretation.
That was former NATO Secretary General Anders Fogh Rasmussen. He said Vladimir Putin is working to undermine Western environmental groups, actually to infiltrate them, to ensure that they oppose fracking in order to make European countries dependent on Russian oil and gas. Russia's energy colossus, one of them at least, called Gazprom, doesn't pretend to be an independent company. It's part of Russian foreign policy, 51% owned by the Kremlin, in fact. Dr. Anders Asland is senior fellow at the Peterson Institute for International Economics. He joins us with more from Washington. Professor Asland, welcome back to the program. Tell me how Russia uses energy as a tool of political and foreign policy power, not just as a commercial trade.
Well, there are many ways, but ever so often Gazprom cuts off the gas supplies to a country that has a government that is not nice enough. This doesn't happen in Eastern Europe. It doesn't happen to Germany. It happens to the Baltic countries, to Georgia, to Moldova, Belarus, and Ukraine. Another way is that Gazprom has intermediaries that get a few $1 billion from the company and then can buy the political leadership in the country in question.
Now, can you give me some examples of that? I have been hunting for clear evidence of Russian political tampering. I see their propaganda, I see their PR agencies, and I hear from lots of countries reports of KGB style, FSB style interference in rallies. But other than Anders Fogh Rasmussen, I haven't heard any sort of direct evidence. Can you give me an example? Or like the KGB's undermining efforts in the Cold War, is it hard to actually pin down because they're subtle about how they operate?
Well, it's not so difficult. One of the starkest examples that Reuters just presented in the last few days in an investigative report, it is the Ukrainian big businessman Dmitry Firtash, who was a middleman between Gazprom and Naftogaz, the Ukrainian gas company. And he got a credit line of $11 billion from Gazprom Bank, the Reuters journalist show. And the general assumption is that he has provided about half of the financing to now ousted President Viktor Yanukovych in the last two elections in 2010 and 2012. And this is a way in which Russia effectively is giving money to an intermediary who then seems to buy the political power in the country. Right now, Mr. Firtash is out on bail in Vienna, where FBI had him arrested because of alleged money laundering in India. And Putin's judo trainer paid the bail of $155 million as a kind loan to this important person that Forbes assesses having a net value of no more than $500 million.
That's
this
incredible.
Sounds like an agent.
Wow, I did not know about this. I'm very grateful for these specific cases. And in the case of an $11 billion line of credit, I mean, I think of Canada, where our entire federal elections, our leading party, the Conservatives, won't spend much more than $20 million to have billions at hand to undermine a country. It's no wonder that country is wobbling in its battle with Russia. Now, let me put up on the screen a chart that I have taken from Izvestia, a Russian magazine. Let me show you. It's in Russian. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's a pricing map that shows that some countries in the red pay an extremely high amount, over $500 per 1,000 cubic meters of natural gas, where other customers of Gazprom pay barely half that, $300. They're the countries in green. There is no logistical, economic, or physical rhyme or reason for this. This is pure politics, that the friendlier you are to Russia, the lower your gas price is, the more Russia wants to punish you, the higher. And isn't it a fact, Professor, that these prices are generally locked in for 10 or 20-year terms? So these countries are not getting a break in the current decline of energy prices, are they?
Well, they are linked to oil, so they do change. So there will be a break. But to give you one of these stark examples, in the first quarter of 2014, Ukraine, when it had a Russia-friendly president, paid $269 per 1,000 cubic meters of gas. Then, on the 1st of April, the price happened to increase slightly to $385 per 1,000 cubic meters. And 2 days later, it increased to $485 per 1,000 cubic meters. So it was almost a doubling in the course of 3 days. And that is real political arbitrariness.
Yeah, absolutely. And by contrast, I mean, you're talking about 1,000 cubic meters. We measure things in cubic feet here in Canada. But that would be, you say about $500, that would be about 12 or 15 bucks per MCF, which would be about triple what we pay for energy in Canada. It's clearly an energy weapon. Well, Professor, I've learned so much from you about Russia's undermining of European politics. I'm going to follow up on these leads you've given me. That's fascinating things. I'm so grateful to you. And I think you've made my case that conflict oil and conflict gas doesn't just take money from the West. It takes away political independence too. Thank you for joining us.